Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself, or do you want me to read what was sent out?
No, I'm happy to introduce myself. I was going to give you a little background. So first, I wanted to thank Sarah for inviting me to speak with you today. And I also wanted to say that I am a student in this journey of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our Inclusivity project. And so I am a complete, novice, but learning every day. So I appreciate the ability to share what New Hampshire SBDC is doing in this particular realm. A little bit about me. I actually am an environmental professional. I have about 20 years experience in environmental, 15 years experience. I worked for IBM doing their hazardous waste permits, EPA as an inspector, DES for a short time in consulting. And then finally, I came into the SBDC helping small businesses with their environmental footprint. And really, it's a very hard sell because most small businesses really care about things like marketing, their bottom line, and all of that other stuff, which is what I help them with now. So could you put the next slide, please?
Yep.
So I'm going to be talking about the Inclusivity project and how it ties into Community Navigator, which is also a new program for our state. Some of you might have heard of that. So a little bit about SBDC. We are a leading resource in the state for business advising and for small businesses. We provide highly individualized, one-on-one, no-cost business advising, and my specialty is sustainability, so I do environmental work as well, and a lot of it involves energy. So, there was just a rate hike announcement a few weeks ago that our rates are going to double in the state, our energy rates. So I expect to get busy with that. We are funded by the Small Business Administration, the state of New Hampshire, and we are hosted by the business school. And we've been doing it for 38 years. And each of you in your prospective states has an SBDC that you can partner with for small business outreach. Next slide, please. So we've been super busy these last few years. Here's last year's numbers, just to let you know what the workload looks like and how we try to accommodate small business. We have 10 advisors. We cover the entire state. As I said, each of us has a specialty. Here are our numbers, which I think are fairly impressive. 7,000 advising sessions and 7,481 advising hours. So we're busy, and we feel like we've completely, we feel like we're everywhere. However, and the next slide, please. We are trying to connect to, and the whole Inclusivity project really focuses on underserved populations. So in New Hampshire, I would say that you can see the demographics. We are a very, we're gaining in diversity year over year, but we're still a very, as you can see, not a very diverse state. And this is how our clients have, the data on our clients with race and ethnicity and gender. It's about a 50-50 male-female, 4.3% African-American, 3.1% Asian, 4% Hispanic, and so on. And then this is who we serve. The regions are the industrial sectors that our clients occupy. So that is an overview of the last year of SBDC. We feel like we've done a great job reaching, we're always open to, next slide, please. We see everyone. We don't exclude anyone, as it says here, every walk of life, every capability, regardless of race, ethnicity, or gender, religion, or politics. And still, we feel like we realize we could be doing a better job, or we could be making better inroads into the those entrepreneurs that haven't accessed us, that are hard to reach and are underserved. And that's where the Inclusivity Project has focused. Our advising, like your work, I'm guessing, is very much based on a trusted relationship. And so our advising, we work very hard to be present, be good listeners, and develop that relationship with the client. So we try to meet them where they're at. And the Inclusivity Project takes that to the next level, if you will. So I've mentioned the Inclusivity Project, and it happens to dovetail with, and the next slide, please, with a larger project called the Community Navigator Program. And I'd love to see a show of hands. I can't see you, but I'm wondering how many of you have heard of this initiative, the Community Navigator Program. I see Nancy has. That's great. Oh, thank you. Okay, good. It is a grant-funded program coming from the Small Business Administration. New Hampshire has received a Tier 2 grant, which is $2.5 million. There are, I think every state has received a Community Navigator grant. And actually, if you go to the website, you'll see who in the state has been awarded the grant. And the whole concept of the grant is hub and spoke. So in New Hampshire, the Community Development Finance Authority is our hub. And then SBDC is one of the spokes that reaches out into the community, trying to reach the underserved entrepreneurial population. Next slide, please. Will Arvello is a business leader in the state. And this is, just a reiterance of how important it is to address the needs of all businesses if we're going to have a robust and economic New Hampshire economy. And next slide, please. So it's, as it turns out, and I know you focus mostly on environmental work, or exclusively on environmental management and performance. We are focusing mostly on business health, and business health often depends on access to capital. And I thought this slide was interesting because it shows where money comes from for entrepreneurs and the business owner. And it's surprising that most businesses use personal savings or bank loans and credit cards and family. And so you can see how generational wealth comes into play with being a successful entrepreneur, but entrepreneurs across the spectrum, across the demographic spectrum, and especially those that don't have access to generational wealth, need assistance. So by leveraging the spokes, CDFA is hoping to include more entrepreneurs in accessing some of this capital. And using the Community Navigator Program and how SBDC has dovetailed its Inclusivity program with that, we hope to reduce economic exclusion, or using the positive, increase economic inclusion. So can you please change the slide? Next slide, please. Thank you. So, and in New Hampshire, and I'm possibly your states are very similar. We have a lot of small businesses, and these are the demographics. And it's really the backbone of the New Hampshire economy. Next slide. So focusing on the Community Navigator Program and how it has supported SBDC in our efforts to be to better serve the underserved community, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Community Navigator Program. It is in the state, the focus is SBA and CDFA. You can see their logo on the slide. Next slide. It's a three-pronged approach, really. It focuses on technical assistance providers. There's a lot of coordination with these technical assistance providers. Sarah is one of them in the state, and she is not included in the Community Navigator Program, but that's not to say that, you know, it's a multi-year program, and maybe Sarah and her services can be brought in also. So it focuses on technical assistance providers in the state. It looks at many community partners, and they're all brought together on a routine basis in something called the community of practice. And much of what we do in the community of practice, these are meetings geared to talk about hard topics that, you know, around race, ethnicity, and, you know, the basic underserved population that we are trying to include. So next slide, please. And here are some of the community partners. SBDC is purely technical assistance, but REDC and GRDC actually lend money. So they're extremely important to this group. Next slide. And so again, the challenge is building capacity and taking down the barriers that keep us from adequately building those trusted relationships with individuals we are trying to help. Next slide. And it's been a learning curve. You know, we have to understand that although I might think that I know everything I need to know about dealing with other cultures, the first step is understanding that I do not, that there are other stories that are being told and I may not be privy to them. So we've come to the table really trying to understand how best to culturally approach many different walks of life. And it has taken, you know, we've had a lot of training. I'll review some of that with you, but we do this, all the partners do this together. It's not done in a vacuum, and it's been very helpful having the support of these other partners. Next slide, please. So more specifically about the SBDC Inclusivity Project. Here are our goals. We hoped through our efforts that we could support more small businesses that you know, are minority owned. And we also hope to make better community relations with organizations that are also pulling in that direction. One of the individuals that we partnered with is not from a business organization at all, but one of these community leaders, Kile Adumene. She heads up Manchester Coalition Action Committee. And so it's very helpful to partner with people who are actually in the community you are trying to reach, namely because they have the trusted relationships that we may not have. And we also, as part of our inclusivity project, enlisted, well, we underwent I would say a self-assessment. How are we doing? How's our own DEI program? How are our advisors, you know, how do they measure up? And how can we improve ourselves? So we did a self-assessment. Next slide, please. And the Community Navigator program funded, I should mention, New Hampshire got $2.5 million. And they're using this money to fund the spokes. And part of that funding went to our, you know, our own internal work, which I think was very helpful. So we hired the head of the Manchester NAACP to review our organization, and I don't have the report, but part of the takeaway is really all your advisors should receive some training in and around DEI and small business DEI. And so we received 12 hours of training over 7 sessions. And here are some of the titles, or here are the titles that we focused on. Recognizing discrimination, achieving performance through DEI, DEI for managers, culture, age, and gender in the workplace, how to have difficult conversations, and how to work with clients of color. And we had an opportunity as an organization to talk about the subject matter, and James was really an excellent sounding board and leader and led us through this training, which was very helpful. It was really eye-opening. Next slide. I have been tasked as the inclusivity advisor for clients of color. And I think I was chosen because I've always taken an interest in entrepreneurs from the New American population and entrepreneurs that are starting, from a very culturally different place. And so I took it upon myself to reach out, or not to reach out, but to take advantage of this training. This is from the New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility. Michelle Veazey heads up the organization, and I am guessing she would share these modules with any of you. They were fabulous. Once a day, I received an email, and the email was chock full of articles, possibly a TED Talk, some videos, links to videos on topics that were incredibly enlightening. For example, did you know that Webster's Dictionary redefined racism last year? I did not know that, and it really refocuses how somebody who's not focused on these topics, it helped me refocus on taking a different perspective. And so here are some other titles, just to give you a sample of the kind of training and self-study guides that were available to me. Next slide. And again, I think Michelle would share these with you. So our approach now, or our approach is that we would partner with the community liaison, and we subcontracted Kile Edumene. And she, through her network, identified 5 liaisons who are also subcontracted with us through the Community Navigator program to reach out into their community networks, and I won't call it being an ambassador, but being a liaison, talking about SBDC and getting to know the work we do and how we want to help small businesses and how we help them. And then they go out into their community and will refer individuals to us. But they don't just refer, they also attend the first meeting with us, because it's hard to develop that trusted relationship where somebody's going to listen to the advice we're given. And sometimes the advice isn't always great. It's always good advice, but it may not be something they want to hear. And the liaison is there to help them feel comfortable and maybe be more receptive to the whole process of an advising relationship. We are focused on 3 areas in the state. SBDC is focused on 3 communities, and so 3 large cities and 1 area of the state that happens to have the biggest Indonesian population outside of New York City in the country. That's in New Hampshire. So we're focused on that community. We're focused in Concord, Manchester, and Nashua. Those are our major cities. And the the demographics over the last few years is changing. So the demand, we believe, is increasing there. We also track all of our outreach and interaction on a separate database that is shared with our community navigator partner, the CDFA. Next slide, please. So here, the other thing we're refocusing on is our success stories. We have always told success stories. It's just that we may not have focused on the success stories that are relatable to this underserved population. So here are two examples of minority business owners that have worked with SBDC and have had good outcomes. So we're putting an extra effort behind that. Next slide. And typically we've never translated any of our marketing material into any other languages, but through the Community Navigator program, SBDC is translating our marketing material into several languages. Here you see Indonesian and Spanish, but we're also doing Portuguese and there was one other one we were doing. So I think this is, I think it was Swahili, I think. And, this is just the beginning. I don't think this, I think we're going to be doing more and more of this as the years pass. And it's definitely been a pivot and a shift for us. Next slide. Lastly, we have never actively used a translation service, but through the Community Navigator program, we are now able to access on demand a translator. The liaisons also have the ability to help us in translation if necessary, but we prefer to use a translation service. So next slide. I think that was all I had. The community of practice. So as I said before, I'm actively participating in a regular meeting where the community leaders like Kile Adumene will lead us through talking about equity. And I will just give you one example of what we've done differently as a result of these meetings. I work from 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever it is. But a lot of the clients that we're trying to reach have full-time jobs and cannot meet them. So we've expanded our office hours. If they can meet on a Saturday, then I'll make myself available for Saturday meeting, or after hours in the evening. And that is just one way SBDC is changing how we operate to accommodate these entrepreneurs that we're trying to reach. So I think yeah, I've explained, and this slide is, this is just some of the other partners that we've really leaned in with, the chambers and some other networks. So and that's, I think the last slides are totally optional. So I'm curious to ask you, how is it going for you in technical assistance outreach? Are you, is there, somebody have a question? I would just like to see what your difficulties are and how your, how you feel like you can overcome some of these obstacles that you might be bumping into.
Yeah, this is Lisa. I would start out by just saying that I think we have some of the same challenges that the SBDCs do, as far as how do we make sure that the people who need our services know about our services. So getting the word out is part of that. And then I think that trusted relationship is another huge part from what we do as well, because when you're talking about things like environmental compliance, it can be very uncomfortable to call a lot of us are in state agencies, to call a state agency and ask questions, knowing that you may not be doing everything correctly, or you might be the concern that you're opening yourself up to increased scrutiny and things like that. So building that relationship and trust, which is really a core part of our programs, is that we are confidential, but still building that trust is for sure a huge part of what we do. So I think
Right.
those are very similar concerns.
Lisa, what state are you from?
Wisconsin.
Okay, so do you have, one thing that seems like a no-brainer, if you will, is translating important material, or at least promotional material, to if there is a new American population there where where language is a barrier. I am not sure if states have done that or not. Is that a typical practice for states?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're talking about a lot in this work group, is, we're focusing on how can we help all of our state small business programs help include, the environmental justice lens with our assistance that we provide. And so one of the things that we have been talking about are our languages and translations, and how to determine if that's needed, which languages are needed, how to get language translations. And I would say it's probably all over the board. We're all different state to state. So some states definitely, I think, have more translations available than other states, but it's
Right.
something that we're looking into more and starting to recognize that there is that need.
Yeah. Todd, I see your hand up. But I
Yeah,
don't
this
see
is Todd.
you. I see your hand.
Yeah, this is Todd. I'm from Ohio.
Okay.
And we've got within Ohio, our Department of Development has set up an organization that's the Minority Business Assistance Centers that work with SBDCs.
Oh, wow.
And so what they do is they have a network of about, I guess 8, maybe 10 around the state, that most of them are urban leagues. Some of them will be like with cities that do outreach to minority communities. We also have a Hispanic coalition that's part of the state, that's through the governor's office, that we work with. And what we do is if we have webinars or different grant opportunities or things like that, we'll always make sure that they're included in our outreach. So instead of, sending a blanket like email to 4,000 different groups or individuals, what I'll do is send it out to the individual urban leagues that are on this group, and then they send it out to their membership. They put it on their website, they put it in their calendar, and that way, that's how they find out about different programs that we might have going on, different like litter prevention programs, lead line replacement programs, and different things like that communities might be interested in. So it's just kind of a different way of doing outreach and targeting different groups like that.
Right. I seem like every state has its certain setup as to how it interacts with their, different groups of demographics. And but mostly, when I think about like the best outcomes that we have, I feel as though it really, and maybe you have seen this too, it really boils down to making that personal connection, to developing that relationship, so that one, they know, yes, you're going to help me. You're going to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah.
You'll make my business stronger. And so how you get in front of that individual business owner, who is going to look at you like, good to see you. Let me show you what I'm doing now. And that they're not fearful that they're going to be turned in. I mean, I think, Sarah could talk a lot more about this than me, but do you still feel like there's a resistance among these business owners that, one, they don't trust you because you might be from a government entity, or two, they don't trust you because you don't look like them? Or is it both, do you think?
For me, it's something that we're utilizing an organization that they're a member of that they trust. So it might be an African American chamber, it might be a urban league, it might be the city. I forget, Dayton, Ohio has a group it's the city that does minority outreach.
Oh, that's great.
So that's kind of, we use them to promote us. And that's something that kind of eases that,
Right.
If it's coming from the chamber, they're more likely to say, okay, it's not going to be, I got you.
Right. Right. That's really smart. That's great. Well, it does, it's great to be able to, one, partner with chambers. I'm really impressed that you've got a technical assistance program out of a state agency that is doing that, because I don't see that a lot in New Hampshire. As a matter of fact, we've had to sort of, you would think it would be a natural relationship to have SBDCs aligned with our chambers, and it's only been since our current state director has been in the leadership role that we've really made that concerted effort to do more with chambers. And chambers themselves are trying to engage a more diverse membership. So anyway, Donovan, hi.
Yeah. Do you happen to have a SCORE program or connected with SCORE there in New Hampshire?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And we have, I consider us cousins, SCORE is SBA funds or has SCORE under their wing, as well as the Center for Women in Enterprise and SBDCs. But we haven't partnered with them necessarily on this particular topic.
Okay.
They aren't an active role in the Navigator program, but they certainly could be.
Okay. Yeah. I asked because you're talking about some level of technical assistance in there. I mean, Sarah does a great job, but there are sometimes things that we were limited. And actually, at the very start of this call, I had somebody call that I had to refer to SCORE, because it's like he needs an engineer to sign off on things. It's like, I can't do that.
Right. Donovan, who are you with? Are you with?
So I'm with Tennessee. I'm with their SB in economic and community development. Environment and conservation.
Okay, so you're in a state agency?
Yep.
So do you ever refer to the SBDC in Tennessee? Is there?
There is a fairly active SBDC. In most cases, I have not referred to them except in a few cases. Mainly if they call me for environmental questions, that's my area. And so I will be able to answer that. If it is outside of environmental, I I do try to locate who they might need to talk to. In some cases, we do have another group called the Business Enterprise Resource Office, which is in our Economic and Community Development, which is sort of related. And I tend to refer groups to them, especially as they have a website called Tennessee Smart Start, which is an interactive website that walks through creation of a business from start to opening your door.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna have to look that up. I should say we do have some online courses that are soup to nuts. I mean, online anytime, how to start a business, but the Smart Start, that sounds really interesting. I would say, I'm a big believer that the SBDC network can be so useful in, I don't know, I think I would partner with them sometimes. I know SCORE there's the retired executives, and they have really strong backgrounds in certain specialties. SBDCs are, I think, always a good resource.
Yeah, we've been trying to connect a little bit more with them. But I'll turn it over to Jeremy, who I think actually is in one.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself, Andrea. I'm Jeremy Hampshire. I manage the SBEP portion in Pennsylvania, and I am actually housed at the SBDCs. So I'm with the Pennsylvania SBDC network. I think our program is one of probably two across the country, where the other one would be the Idaho SBDC with Belinda. She does SBEP work as well. So we're kind of unique in that regard. And a lot of what you said, I can attest to firsthand. And I know Nancy Larson asked me a question if Pennsylvania got any community navigator money or grant money, and I'm not quite sure. I know it was on the radar with our SBDC state director, but I'm not sure if any individual SBDCs applied for it or received it. But a lot of the programs that you talked about, yeah, I'm well aware of it. We try to connect again with a lot of people. Samantha Harmon's on here, so she's actually our state small business ombudsman, and she can probably agree that a lot of what we do is just, as you mentioned, just make connections with various SBDC locations. I think we have now 16 individual SBDCs in Pennsylvania, and I constantly have to do outreach to individual SBDCs, with staff turnover, reaching out to the scores or the other economic development programs in the state and so forth. So I would agree that it's all about making the right connections and again, building the trust with the small business community.
Right. And, the other thing I would say is we all have to work together. Like, I know there are times that I'm like, hey, that's my client. What are you doing? But really, it's going to take a few people pulling in the same direction with some clients, because they are starting from a different place. Like some of the clients I have through this program don't have technical skills. Like they don't, it's hard for them to use a computer. They don't even have a computer. They may not speak English, or they may not like numbers. They love to cook, but they don't like numbers, And so the more resources we can bring to them, the more the programmatic assistance it's really nice. And I know the Pennsylvania program well, because I've been at SBDC for 25 years, which is ridiculous. And Pennsylvania has always had a strong environmental, the SBDC has housed that. And Sarah does a great job. I love working with Sarah. I love being able to support, if she has a client that needs some financial stuff, great. We work together, we can work together on it. Recently, we did a success story on a client, a small business client who was a wood finisher. And our success stories, we are all everywhere. We push it out on our Facebook page and in our email and our newsletter. And Sarah's reading our newsletter, and it's like, oh, a wood coater. Do they have a spray booth? And I'm like, oh boy, so, so she's like, could you introduce us, or could you try to help him yourself? So it's a very close relationship, SBDCs, and I think we do a very good job being that trusted advisor. Many of our clients we've had for years. And I'm sure Sarah would probably say also that she has many repeat clients. So, and Pennsylvania's done a good job at managing and keeping the SBTAP program, right? That's what you are, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
I've known Sarah for a long time. I've been with our network since 2005. So I've seen a lot of the twists and turns that the SBDC in Pennsylvania has taken as well. But again, as you mentioned, it's really kind of making connections, learning to make the proper referrals within the SBDC network or to other external partners as well, and then also educating some of the business consultants in the SBDC network to make sure that they understand what we do from an environmental technical assistance standpoint, so they can make the proper referrals if they're working with an existing business, so that if they run into an environmental issue, that they can think about our program, and then we can work with them. And it's difficult because everybody's working, everybody's doing 8 million different things. So sometimes services are available free of charge to the small business, but sometimes it's just people forget, and you kind of have to just kind of constantly kind of buzz in people's ears so that they don't forget about your services. So
right. I think you bring up a really good point. SBDC advisors really should be trained, or at least they should have a strong appreciation for what environmental footprint means to their clients, whether it's an energy bill, which certainly impacts the environment and their bottom line, or whether it's strictly a air, waste, water program. Do you even know what the requirements are? And I don't think SBDC advisors, I'll speak for my own SBDC. I don't think advisors fully appreciate all that goes on, especially if it's a manufacturer, all the regulations and requirements that are expected of them. So I think you should train once a year. Hey, it's your annual, here's what's new, or let's just review what's going on. And now we call it sustainability, right? Everybody's focused on that. And DEI is really folded into that too. Like the strongest organization, the one that will be most sustainable, is one that has a diverse workforce. And so.
Yeah,
This
go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa.
You had your hand up.
Oh, okay. This is Samantha Harmon in Pennsylvania. I just wanted to hop on since Jeremy does such a great job covering all of our topics. And I do want to say that he and his program do an absolutely amazing job at assisting with environmental compliance through the SBDCs. And I know his staff works really hard to help everybody out. Again, we're not in each of them individually. We don't have 16 people out there, but him and his staff work with all of them as needed, depending on where the need is in the community. So as always, I appreciate all the work he does there and the networks that he has already created. I would say I agree that not all of the SBDCs necessarily focus on environmental compliance as their main push. Some of them have other specialties, but that is something, again, I've only been in this position about a little over a year now. And one of my goals was to increase the interaction with the SBDCs and to try to reorient some of that focus on the environmental compliance portion of the business development. So I think that's something that we'll probably work towards over the next couple of years, is to try to get everybody kind of back in the circle. I know the prior person in my position was very, very busy with a lot of things. So we've got more staff now. So we have that opportunity to do a little more outside work outside of my state agency. So I am looking forward to that. I did want to kind of loop back to some of the conversation at the beginning about language access and some things that I found. So I work in our DEI group So I work within DEP, our environmental agency. So we have DEI work groups at DEP, lots of acronyms, I'm sorry. And I also, particularly, I'm on a subgroup on grant equity. And one of the big pushes right now in grant equity is access and availability. So again, one of the barriers that we've identified is language access. And what I found some things out recently. So in Microsoft Word, you can actually translate documents to over 60 different languages, regardless of, if they're posted online or whatever. So you don't have to like generate it to be able to translate it, because I actually downloaded one of ours from our online library and I was able to use the translate function on that. So that was really interesting to find out, because that's free and available to anyone who can open Microsoft. I also found out that our online, so we do all online electronic applications for our grant programs. We transitioned to that. We were starting and then the pandemic kind of hastened that. So now all of our applications are done through it's called the ESA system. And that actually functions through the browser. So using Chrome, you can actually display the application in the language of your choice.
Oh, wow.
So
that's great.
Yeah, so I'm adding instructions into I run a grant program for energy efficiency and pollution reduction. So we're actually adding that into the grant for this year as an appendix, giving them that information that if you are using a different language, or if you prefer a different language, you can translate these documents and this application online into your preferred language so that you can process it. Now, where we get hung up a little bit is the attachments, or the the things you have to download and upload. So we're still kind of working through that. We also have a service. I don't know if it's for all state agencies or if this is just our contract, but if someone calls in and they have a non-English preferred language, we actually have a translation service that we can connect through so that they can talk to us. So that is available to state employees, at least in DEP, free of charge to us. So that's already covered. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, that was a resource that I don't think a lot of people in my agency realize is available. So, we're trying to make it so if they want to reach out, and again, as SBO, I get different kinds of questions, it's not necessarily compliance, but I do get a lot of business, small business questions. And I do refer out to the SBDCs. So having that availability of that tool, so that, if we can make that more publicly known, that yes, even if English is not your primary language, you can still call us and we can try to help you. I think that's really important to get out there too. So I just wanted to bring that up. That was the last couple months have, starting all of this work has really made us all go down a rabbit hole a little bit on language access. But I, so you guys might want to look at your own agencies and find out if there are, I'm calling them hidden tools, because there's things available that, until I started digging, that I was not aware were available to us as the state employees or to the public as a free option. So those are things you might want to look into.
Have you gotten any feedback as to, like, for some of those free translation services, like how well they are actually translating? I think one of our problems is, when we talk about, very technical things, that can be very hard to translate.
Yeah, I think these are more, they're not written translation. Now, we do have a pay service for that we, through our bidding, again, I'm not, it's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to misspeak, but I know there is a service available that charges that would translate documents for us. And I know they're a professional service, so I would assume that their translations are good. This one is verbal translation. So again, I haven't used it yet, but again, it was because I was not aware that the service was available. And occasionally I can get through with some pidgin Spanish, but that's about it.
So, it takes long. The thing to keep in mind is every meeting takes twice as long, because everything is twice.
Has to relay.
But, I think it's really, many of you work for, government agencies and you have a budget. We have never had a budget for translation. And the Community Navigator program has made it available to us now. And I haven't used it yet. I have a meeting coming up next week with a liaison who's bringing in one of their business contacts who needs some assistance, and we're going to use it. So it's lucky for you that you guys probably have some hidden, that hidden tool you just referred to, Samantha. It's good.
So yeah, here in Tennessee, we do have a contract with an English translator service, and with multiple people throughout the department as divisional contacts, so that if translator services are needed, then somebody in that division can contact that person. They can set up the direct translation service. We even have a page. Admittedly, it's a little bit hidden, so I wish it was a little bit more obvious. And there we have at least 5 languages saying, like, here's what we can offer. But beyond that, that page itself also, I think, has Google Translate on it. So in that case, if you need languages that aren't there. As for written language, we do have, I think, a contract with something called the Tennessee Foreign Language Institute, which I think can provide translation services in 30 or 40 different languages in a written form. But as Andrea said, sometimes getting it in a technical is a little bit more difficult because the translator may not understand the technical terms or what is needed. Our last item that we did have translated was translated in-house by somebody that was part of the department and a native speaker of that language. So that might be something to look at within your departments if you do need something translated.
I have to say that New Hampshire although we probably have the greatest increase in minority population, it's still very small because we're a very small state, and a little bit of change, the absolute number will, even though it might be small, is a big percentage change. So we are still really trying to navigate this language thing, and I think that, at least what I've been told, sometimes these automatic translation services aren't, it's better than nothing, but it sometimes misses the mark on what you're really trying to say. So, we've actually hired translators who are native speaking to do many of our marketing materials, as opposed to putting it into a Google and getting out the translation. But mostly, I think the most effective thing that has happened to increase our numbers of minority businesses has been the liaison, has been that person in the community, which is not an SBDC person, but is working for a community group that, that the population identifies as somebody who I trust, somebody who I know, somebody who thinks like me, somebody who I can relate to. And that, I've had 35 clients since February. Not the same kind of client that you guys are looking for, because you are looking for like an active business that is producing air, waste, water concerns or something like that. But the liaisons have been really effective in bringing us closer to the population that we're looking to serve. And also, I will say, being available outside the regular hours of business, which, those were the 2 most impactful things that we've done. And then the training for each and every advisor has been, I think it's, if nothing more, it has raised our awareness of where we might have blind spots. So I would absolutely, my suggestion is to reach out to Michelle Vesey. If you want her contact information, I will be happy to share it, and see if she will share the modules. It's an email, And it's, you know, she has curated the articles, the videos, the topics. And I can't tell you how, one, it was really interesting also, really interesting, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be really valuable, and that would be great if we had some resources to share with the full Small Business Assistance Program network. So we can, you know, start getting everybody thinking about these things more.